Welcome, everybody. My name is Jo Delamore, and I am zooming in today from the sacred land of the Ohio River Valley on Turtle Island in the ancestral lands of the Adena mound building people and the Shawnee, among many others. And I'm delighted to welcome you today on behalf of the Work That Reconnects Network. You can move to the next slide. Thank you for joining us for the Webinar and Conversation Cafe program, where we're providing a wide range of rich educational and supportive online events for our global community. Our intention is to strengthen the web of the Work That Reconnects community while reaching beyond its current edges to weave deeper connections with others who are contributing to the great turning in diverse and complementary ways. Today, we are really excited to celebrate the launch of Coming Together in the Great Turning, Collective Liberation and Work That Reconnects. This is a brand new book co-authored by Aravinda Ananda, Molly Brown, and Kurt Kuhwald that includes contributions from 13 other writers from around the world, several of whom are with us here today. So we're really thrilled to welcome all of you, writers and contributors. And on behalf of the Work That Reconnects Network, I really want to share our gratitude for all of the authors and contributors who have brought this book to life. It's deeply aligned with our commitment to undoing oppression in the work and in the world. And we know that it's going to empower and inform our ongoing shared learning journey of transitioning from societies based in exploitation to societies and ways of living that are rooted in collective liberation and well-being for all. So thank you so much for the work of this book and for the work that you've done leading up to and will continue to do for collective liberation for all of us. So I'm going to pass it on to Aravinda to lead us in. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jo. Yeah, thank you, Work That Reconnects Network, for partnering with us in this global launch event for coming together in the Great Turning, Collective Liberation, and Work That Reconnects. Wow, what a moment this is. My name is Aravinda Ananda, and I'm joining from Massachusetts lands, just outside of present-day Boston in the Northeast United States. And not only am I one of the author editors of this book, but I also have the pleasure of being part of two of the co-sponsoring organizations of this event. And so on behalf of the Anti-Oppression Resource Group and Interhelp, I warmly welcome you here. If you haven't heard about the Anti-Oppression Resource Group, it's a somewhat informal group of Work That Reconnects facilitators, participants, practitioners who've been meeting since 2017 to look at patterns of oppression that have been showing up in Work That Reconnects spaces and be in mutual support and learning with one another about how we can grow our practice and how we can support the wider community in learning journeys around this. So I'll put a link in the chat to more information about AORG if you have interest in checking that out. And I'm also delighted to welcome you here on behalf of Interhelp, which is another organization I'm a part of. It's historically been a Northeast regional hub for the Work That Reconnects Northeast United States, and more recently has expanded to support learning around liberatory group work. And I'm deeply grateful for some of the fundraising that was possible through Interhelp that supported some of the writing and research for this book. So thank you very much to Interhelp. Ooh, I put the link for Interhelp in rather than the AORG link. I'll get an AORG link a little bit later for you all. Yeah, a great deal went into the making of this book. A good, Molly, or someone from the network, there's requests in the chat for how to order the book internationally. If one of you has information for that, awesome. Yeah, just like so much went into this book. As you've heard, there are 3 people who are part of the final editorial team and many contributors. A good number of us editors and contributors were a part of AORG, but not all of us. So just gratitude for the many efforts that went into this book and holding the complexity of it all, both the pain that necessitated looking at some patterns of harm happening in Work That Reconnects spaces and the pain that's been a part of this enormous labor process, and also the joy of the generosity of so many gifts that are shared in this book, and the massive outflowing of support and the gifts that are possible when we turn with care to this work. So thank you for being here today. I'm really excited for you to hear more about the book and hear from contributors. In a little while, you'll hear from our author-editor team, and then we're going to have a breakout room, and then you'll hear from lots of contributors. So that's some of the flow. But before I turn to that, is Rob West, our wonderful acquisitions editor at New Society Publishers here. Rob, thank you so much to you and New Society Publishers for saying yes to this book and supporting this book. It would not have been possible without you. It's been a deep joy and pleasure to work with you. Thank you for all of your support, and thank you for your role in supporting this global launch party.
Well, thank you, Aravinda. I appreciate that. Molly asked if I could say a few words about why we took on the book and about New Society. By the way, it's good to see you, Gemma, out there. Didn't know you were part of this. And it's nice to see other faces as well. Kurt, we've never met. And Aravinda, I think we've been on one Zoom call. Um, so good morning to afternoon, evening to wherever you're coming in from. I'm located on Gabriola Island in British Columbia in Snuneymuxw Nation territory. I'm part of New Society. I'm the head of acquisitions. And so basically I find books to publish in our sector. New Society, I think many of you may know of us. We've been around for about 50 years. Started as part of the movement for a New Society in Philadelphia and merged with West Coast Radicals from British Columbia several decades ago. And so we've been going for about 50 years, published several hundred books. And our mission is to publish books for a world of change in a way that has a minimum impact on the biosphere and our environment. And our vision is to provide the world with fundamental tools to help build a just and ecologically sustainable society. So right there, you might see the instant mission alignment between the Work That Reconnects and New Society. Some of the books we published over the years include those with Molly and Joanna Macy, Thinking Like a Mountain. Some of you may have that venerable, slender tome on your shelves. Widening Circles, Joanna's memoir from about a decade ago, I guess, and Coming Back to Life with Joanna Macy and Molly Brown. And one of the things that's really important about this new book, and I'm not going to get into the details, I'll save that juiciness for later, is that the movement and the Work That Reconnects is a kind of a rare entity in the world. It's an open source before open source was really a thing. And in some ways, I think of it as a commons. It's kept alive through the commenting efforts of the practitioners. As any commons is, commons not a static thing. It's something that exists because people keep it living and breathing and moving forward. And that requires critical reflection. And so what drew me to this book was the continuous efforts within the network, the people that do the work, to reflect on their own practices, to not atrophy and wither and be stuck in the wilderness, but rather to continuously move and change as needed, as new ideas appear or new old ideas, as flags are raised, as people think up new ways to think and practice the work, new methods. And so this book offers a lot of that, in fact, much of that. And so in some ways, I think of it as it offers a critical eye, yet a compassionate eye. And it also offers a guiding hand towards new methods and ways of doing things to carry on the work. And so the work continues to act as a living, breathing entity that is really aligned with world changing, which is ultimately at this time, critical time, we need more than ever. So we're delighted to be helping to bring it to the world. And I'd just like to thank all the authors that contribute, the editors, contributing authors, and everyone for their incredible work on what really has been a multi-year project, decades in the thinking and years in the making. So thank you all. Congratulations. It's going to be fantastic.
Thanks so much, Rob. Thank you to everyone at New Society Publishers. Yeah, and Molly, I think that you're up next to share the welcome for our book with everyone.
And what I'm going to share with you is the welcome that is sort of in place of a preface in the book, but it applies to our meeting right here today as well. We authors, editors of this book are so honored to welcome you as a reader and global community member. We welcome you wherever you live in the world and whatever languages you speak. We welcome you if you facilitate the work that reconnects, and we welcome you if you're familiar with it, and we welcome you if you're new to the work. We welcome your feelings as you pick up this book, whether they're curiosity or trepidation. We welcome your open hearts and your skepticism. We welcome your culture and ethnic origins, your food preferences, music, cultural rituals, and all the complexities that make up your cultural identity. We welcome your race and your skin tone. We welcome you with all the relationships you bring with you, siblings, parents, or caregivers, partners, children, animals, lands, and bioregions, your ancestors and spiritual allies, and other loved ones. All your relationships are welcome here. We welcome your spiritual practice, your religious affiliations, your walk with meaning, however you hold that aspect of your life. Your love is welcome here. How you love, who you love, and your understanding of what love is all about. They're all welcome. We welcome you in all the ways your sexuality is unfolding. We welcome your gender identity and gender expression. We welcome you wherever you are on your learning journey towards collective liberation. We welcome you whatever your socially assigned privilege and proximity to power. We welcome you if you've been harmed by oppressive systems, and we'll welcome you if you've harmed others. We welcome the complexity of feelings that may arise for you, your grief, guilt, shame. Your quirks and ambiguities are welcome. We welcome your humor and your solemnity. We welcome your affinities for silence or for boisterous expression. We welcome the parts of you that you're still figuring out. We welcome you in your role as activists, healers, feelers, intuitives, parents, caregivers, students, artists, witches, diviners, change agents, magicians, educators, warriors, and peacemakers. We welcome you, whatever your range of mental, emotional, and physical abilities. We welcome your introversion and your extroversion. Your emotions, all of them, are welcome here. We welcome your wounds and your scars. We welcome the experiences that have led you to this moment. We welcome your wise ancestors. Ancestors, please be with us, collaborating with us to anchor the healing and what is most needed in these times. We welcome your sacred connections to the lands of your ancestors, the lands that hosted your birth, and the lands that you're currently standing on. We welcome all the life that came before you, the indigenous people and the ecosystems of the land you're on now. We invite you to let your roots sink into this nutrient-dense soil, intertwining with the roots of everyone else reading this book and connecting to the root systems of all the living beings as we collectively build our power to heal, to create a healing community across continents and around our blessed earth. Welcome. So you're all welcome in every way possible. And now I'm going to move into a little talk about why we did this book. And I'll start with talking about, as co-author of Coming Back to Life, the desire to do a 10th anniversary update, which would have been published last year. And I really wanted to do this. And I knew that Joanna was at a place in her life when that wasn't going to be possible. But I thought, well, I'll I'll do a revision and then we'll work on it together after I do the initial work. But that turned out not to be possible. And so what to do, what to do. And Kurt, who's on this call here with us, came up with the idea that we could do some kind of a workbook or some kind of we called it a companion guide to the coming back to life that would bring out more of the social justice issues, as we're calling it collective liberation now, and try and correct the bias that was inevitable because Coming Back to Life was written by two white, middle class, well educated American women. And we wanted to just try and make it more inclusive. So the companion guide was to address that and also to, it's not that social justice issues were left out of Coming Back to Life, not at all. They were there. But the bias was definitely towards the environment and towards environmental issues. And we wanted to just correct that and specifically address how to do the work in a more inclusive way. So we ended up with 3 author editors and 13 other contributors, which make this book what it is. And as we go through the table of contents in a little while, you'll get to meet at least some of those contributors. So I will let Kurt, Kurt, I think we're just going to use your video. Is that correct? I can't hear you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm up to it at this point. I could do it.
Do you know what? Okay, well,
Well,
just
what is it? I thought that we were, though, I thought we were going to go in, in the order of the table of contents.
this is the overview, why
Oh,
we
the
did the book,
overview.
why we did the
Oh
book.
goodness. Okay, okay. Yeah, let me say a few words about that. And
Okay.
yeah. Um, I, yeah, I think the thing that struck me about it was that there was this deep feeling that was running through the community that we really needed. I mean, well, we had a weekend away with folks who were really looking into the issues of race and race oppression and oppression and privilege and all of that. And it became so clear then. We left there, and I said to some of the people that I left with, we've just had an earthquake in the Work That Reconnects. And it was a positive earthquake for me. And it was the idea that we needed to expand this work out in so many ways. So that's really the intention that I came to it with and supported. And my role, I felt more than anything else, was supporting and editing. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's
Great,
about
thank
it.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, Aravinda.
Yeah, thanks, Molly and Kurt. So, why this book? I saw a need for this book to make it even truer to the name of Work That Reconnects for all who experience it, because I know that when harms arising from systemic oppression are ignored or otherwise not well tended to, it's a deeply painful and disconnecting experience for people being targeted by those dynamics. And while sometimes hearing the word harm can make people contract, either withdrawing in pain or withdrawing in fear of blame and shame, the potential rewards of restored belonging and connection are so great when we choose to lean into this work of creating communities of care for all. So that's the promise of saying yes to leaning into this work. In 2018, I worked with Mutima Imani to organize a Work That Reconnects facilitators gathering on Ohlone land on the west coast of the United States. And this offered an opportunity for some people to name and share some recurring patterns of harm that had been showing up in Work That Reconnects spaces. The Anti-Oppression Resource Group, which I mentioned earlier, subsequently took that list and made it into a document called De-Escalating Patterns of Harm in White Dominant Spaces, where we shared not only a list of those harms, but also some examples of them to further learning, and also some suggestions for how to shift those dynamics and not keep perpetuating them. And thanks, Gemma, for putting the link in the document to that historical document, the link in the chat to that document. And so a lot of my work and contribution to this book flows out of that. I'll share more about it later. And now I wanted to say that whether in this book or elsewhere, whether with the Work That Reconnects or elsewhere, I just warm encouragement to lean into this work of reducing and eliminating harm wherever possible and addressing ongoing harm that inevitably arises with as much care as we can. And this is not a new invitation. Chapter 12 in the 2014 edition of Coming Back to Life, entitled Learning with Communities of Color, shares some of the history of earlier efforts. And some people have been making this invitation for decades and doing this kind of work for decades. One person that I'm deeply grateful to and indebted to is Mutima Imani, who it's been my honor to work with on a number of projects. And I just wanted to thank you, Mutima, for all of your contributions to this current growing edge and evolution in the Work That Reconnects. And I'm so excited about your books that are out this year, A Global Invitation to a Thriving Worldwide Society, The Promise of the Great Turning, which showcases some of Mutima's awakening to love work, and for the book that she co-authored with Angela Miller Porter that explains Mutima's expanded spiral. That book's entitled Mindful Earth Liberation, an Expanded Spiral Guide for the Work That Reconnects. Thanks, Gemma, for putting links to those books in the chat. I warmly encourage you all to check them out, and just offering deep gratitude for all of the many people over the years who have contributed to this work of growing and expanding beloved Work That Reconnects. So that's some of why the three of our author-editor team were involved with this particular book. And what we'd love to do now is to invite you into a breakout room where you can share some of why you came to this book launch today and where you're at in your learning journey with committing to collective liberation. People are at all different places in this. Some people have been involved in it for decades. Some it's newer for, some it's completely new for. So in a moment, you're gonna have an invitation to a breakout room where you can introduce yourself and share how you're arriving to this invitation, this call, this work. And I know some of you aren't able to join breakout rooms, and some of you put an asterisk before your name. If you weren't able to put an asterisk before your name and you're not able to join the breakout room, that's okay. You can just not accept the invitation and stay here in the main room with everyone. But please stick around. I know that sometimes I've bounced from a Zoom before when they say there's going to be a breakout room that I don't feel able to join. If you feel up for joining it, I love connecting with other people in the Work That Reconnects network. It can be a beautiful opportunity, and it's also okay if you don't want to join. So in a moment, you're going to have an invitation to join a room with possibly 2 other people. And the invitation is just to introduce yourself. And you may wish to share some about where you are in your learning journey in practice of collective liberation. So are there any questions about the breakout rooms before some of us head over to them? You'll have about 2.5 to 3 minutes each. I may not have said that. That's helpful. And when you're listening, the invitation is to just listen without comment to whoever's speaking. And our tech team will try to broadcast a message about every 2.5 or 3 minutes with a suggestion to change speakers. Okay. All right. Now I'll ask again, now that I actually gave some of those important instructions. Are there any questions before some of you all join breakout rooms? All right. Hearing none, I wish you fruitful time getting to connect with one another. And I'll see the rest of you back here in the main room in a little while.
We're popping the prompt in the chat there too. Why you came and where you see
Great.
yourself in collective liberation journey. Okay, are we all set, Gemma? Here we go.
Thanks, Joe.
So this book is one tool and only one that can be useful uh, in this learning journey that we're all on together. And incidentally, the title of the book, Coming Together in the Great Turning, was the first title we thought of. And then we didn't like it and it wasn't good enough. And we went through a whole bunch of other titles and we ended up back with Coming Together in the Great Turning. So here we are. Uh, so we are all coming together in this path of collective liberation. So nevertheless, it's a good tool and you can pre-order it at a discount until December 16th, which is the official publication date. However, you'll get it right away. You don't have to wait to get it till December 16th. I know some other people that have pre-ordered have said that they got a notice that their book is being shipped. So you can get it right away. And the pre-order link is in chat. And please tell other people about it that you think might be interested in it. So this can benefit the larger community. And we're going to have a book giveaway, which Joe is going to talk about. There's been some questions about how to get it if you're international. And I'm afraid I did not explore that question before this call. So the EPUB is available today. So if you are international, you can get the EPUB right away. But as far as a hardcover book, I don't know. We'll have to get back to you, I guess. Let you know about that.
It's probably a question for New Society as the publishers. Yeah.
But one way that you can get a physical copy of the book is by entering your name into the free book giveaway that's about to happen, which will include shipping to international locations.
That's true. That's true. So everybody in there, I see, okay, I see a couple new people coming, but
Yeah.
I've got the list here. So I can cut off. Yep. All right. This is the list. We're gonna do a little random book giveaway. And we're going to use this special little tool. So, can you see
Yeah.
uh, all these people entered into the giveaway, and we're going to see who's going to be the lucky winner right now. Oh, it's Pam. Pam S. Do we see? Yay. I'm going to reach out to you in the chat and we'll get your mailing address so that we can get a book mailed out to you. And then get one more. The two book giveaway. I don't know how the red streaks got on the screen, but we're just going to ignore those. Okay, here we go. One more. Mary. Mary T. All right. Yay. Awesome. Omar.
It's me again. Is that right? Okay. Uh, so we're going to give you an overview of the book now, and we organized the ideas and materials into 5 sections because it's a little overwhelming. There's so much in here. And so we're going to go through it section by section and chapter by chapter, and the people who contributed to each chapter will speak. And so, are the table of contents being shared already? Yes. No, not quite. I don't see them yet anyway. Okay, so we start with The Forward by Pat McCabe, which is, I don't know, those of you don't know Pat McCabe, she's a native woman from, I believe, Dene background primarily. And she has a sacred, special, spiritual name of Women Stand Shining. And her forward is just, it's like a little package of indigenous teaching. It's just quite wonderful. So I think you will all enjoy that. The Welcome, which I read to you before, and then the context and overview. So chapter one really was written by all three of us, Aravinda, myself, and Kurt, and we it just kind of talks about why this book and gives a little background on how we wrote it together and gives a little background on each of us as authors, author editors. We call ourselves author editors because there was a lot of editing going on. Then chapter two is an updated overview to the evolving work that reconnects. We didn't want it, we wanted to have something that would introduce the work to people who haven't read Coming Back to Life and didn't want to have to go and read another book. So we I summarized the major ideas and concepts, the spiral, the three stories, what we call the three stories, which is business as usual, the great unraveling, which we're all seeing so clearly around us these days, and the great turning. But I brought it in from the how it's evolved. For example, the three stories used to be just about since the Industrial Revolution kind of thing. And we were like, wait a minute, the great unraveling's been happening with through colonial behaviors for 500 or 600 years. So we tried to update the stories to be much way more inclusive and not just from a white middle class perspective. So that all that material is in chapter 2. And so even though you may have read Coming Back to Life, I think you'll find that chapter very helpful to sort of update. It's kind of like what I would have done if I'd been able to do a revision of Coming Back to Life. That's in chapter 2. And then let's see, what else do I need to talk about? That's it. I can now pass it to Sarah, and we have a wonderful video of Sarah Nahar, chapter 3, which is, oh gosh, I'm sorry, but I can't remember. It's a complex name. From systems of oppression to interlocking systems of love. I may not be love, but it could be
Support. Interlocking.
support. Thank you. Okay,
Great.
so we'll see. Go for it.
Okay. Okay, there may be a little bit of background noise here, but let's lean in and listen.
I'm Dr. Sarah Nahar, and it was a huge joy to write Chapter 3, From Interlocking Systems of Oppression to Interconnected Systems of Support. I actually wrote it during the same time I was writing my religion dissertation in the same program at Syracuse University that Joanna Macy graduated from in 1978. So though while it was stressful to write two types of documents at the same time, I really wanted to do it because of the genius of this book project and because I felt it was a way that I could both honor and build on the work that reconnects, which has a lot of influence from the Onondaga Nation, and that's where Syracuse University is, and where Joanna helps develop the work that reconnects during her PhD. And there are still people here who remember those first workshops and continue to do Indigenous solidarity. So I write a little bit about that in the chapter, but it starts out with a visualization. Right? Imagine you're standing very close to a robin who is sitting in the middle of a small structure. You notice one wire, but the robin is acting as if this one wire is keeping them enclosed. It's not till you actually back up that you see the other vertical wires come into view. You make eye contact with this robin and your heart sinks, but you see the cage for what it is, an interlocking system of wires which surround the robin's space in such a way that escape is pretty much impossible. So like the wires that make the cage, systems of oppression interlock and curtail the lives of most people in the world. And these are systematic, not individualized. And so the chapter is about how challenging oppressions must take into account the interlocking nature of these systems. Because it's impossible to separate the various cage wires from one another, because they reinforce one another so much, becoming stronger and inseparable as they do. And so one thing this chapter allowed me to do is try to figure out how to name these, and I've been doing it orally for a while, but I wrote it down. And so the phrase I often say comes across a little bit in a way to give the impact of overwhelm, but however you want to name it in your workshops, you can. The phrase I use is cis heteronormative Christian hegemonic classist settler colonial white supremacist petrochemical eco-stylic US-centric ageist monoamorous patriarchal corporate capitalist industrial growth society of premature death. Right. So that's how I name it when I'm in a workshop, because it's like, what is the society that we're in? But you know, the chapter encourages you to find a way to name these oppressions, because if you don't in your workshop, people are feeling them already, and not naming them does not create an escape or a bypass. It continues erasure. And you know, while these oppressions are not the focus of the work that reconnects, acknowledging that they are there can assist people in feeling free to name their experiences with them and how these systems impact Earth as well. Because the struggle of the people and the struggle of the Earth is one struggle. So I write about that and about Malus Maleficarum, which accelerated the femicides in Europe, and that's where I start the climate clock and the impacts of colonization. And also the chapter has a few key anecdotes from Work That Reconnects facilitation moments, and that leads me into thinking about an interconnected system of support that we need as an antidote to these interlocking systems of oppression. So the Anti-Oppression Resource Group, which has been working within WTR spaces and other spaces, can help create these interconnected systems of support, because as individuals, we can't counter all of these oppressions, but together we're in it for the long haul, and we can support one another in figuring out how to do this well, and to recognize and metabolize our own complicity and recognize the complexity of issues. And this is not just part of the work, it's integral to the work that reconnects and our own wholeness and well-being. So I look forward to your feedback on the chapter, and I'm confident that the book will be a support to our collective commitment to life on Earth.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. We were so excited about her chapter because it brought the big picture into and that's why we put it first. And now we're going to hear from Mark, who's had these amazing 2 chapters on the history of the work.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. Always hard to speak after Sarah, even if it's recorded. So the context for this invitation is that I had written my master's thesis on the history of the work that reconnects, like 2020, 2022. Originally, I was motivated. I'm situated in Brussels, and I'm kind of in more sort of French-speaking eco-anarchist networks, and so I was trying to figure out how to bring the work into that space, and so I wanted to figure out the history. And a lot of the people, like I had a lot of interviews with Molly, with Aravinda, with Mutima, with Sarah Purtle, who's also here on the call. And so this chapter felt like a way of giving back all of that research and to make it useful for the community. So basically, it was one big chapter that we split off into 2, but they really build off of each other. So the first chapter is really about connecting the sort of small, quote unquote, history of the work that reconnects within the sort of big history of the social movements within which it was embedded. And to break that of evolution into different phases to kind of help us map out the cadence of that evolution. So I start in the late 70s with the beginning of despair and empowerment work in the context of the anti-nuclear movement. And then we move into deep ecology work in the context of the sort of Australian environmentalist movement. Then there's a sort of phase of kind of what I call abeyance. So there's a sort of slowdown in social movements around the late 80s, early 90s with the rise of corporate globalization, where the work kind of is really working under the soil. There's a bit of a slowdown. And then a phase of sort of reemergence and reconsolidation in the late 90s, which is when the different repertoires, which up until then were separate, get reconsolidated inside the work that reconnects frame. And then that leads into a sort of 5th phase, which I just took the name Evolving Edge, which had been sort of used in the network to describe that sort of integrate what the book is about, essentially, right? That integration of a more focused or critical social justice lens. It's not that it was absent before, but bring them to sharper focus. And that whole history as a whole, but especially that last phase, right? History is always provisional. It's a first sort of step. So I really meant it as a way it's one way to tell that story. It's not a final word. There are many pieces that couldn't fit. So my sort of hope is that it can be a sort of reopening of the conversation of how do we understand that articulation between this work of the evolving edge of the work that reconnects within that broader history of the work that reconnects. And then that leads into the second chapter, which is kind of my contribution to that conversation based on the research that I did, where I bring in essentially 3 pieces that seemed relevant from that standpoint. There's a first bit about situating within a longer history, sort of going back before the work that reconnects to the sort of long history of pacifism as a political culture in the United States in the 20th century, with a focus on the movement for a new society, which is out of which New Society Publishers came. So there were actually deep links, like very specific links in the 70s between the Interhelp network that helped produce despair and empowerment work and Movement for a New Society. So I sort of re-ground in that moment and how these questions of social justice were already very much present for those actors. There's a second moment about where I really go look with generosity around how do the frames of the anti-nuclear movement in the 80s can sometimes, if they're not sort of consciously understood as socially specific frames, come into friction with more contemporary frames around environmental justice, because they were sort of very universalizing frames that tended to really emphasize sort of our common humanity and our common togetherness, which was a very important frame for that time, but which can then maybe could cause friction when we bring in more frames of environmental justice that tend to forefront difference, not to create division, but to sort of name the differences of power and privilege that are, so that we can address them. And then there's a third bit where I sort of re-explore the debate between deep ecology and social ecology that was happening in the 80s, in which many of these questions of power, how do we understand the questions of oppression within the human sphere, in how those link with ecological questions. So there's that sort of famous sentence by Murray Bookchin that, right, the domination of nature by humans is rooted in the domination of humans within themselves. So I sort of bring up a few of those strands and conversations that were happening, so that we can hold the perspectives that are explored in this book within that wider context of, like, they're both new and old, and we sort of can connect to those longer, that long line, as Sarah Pearl likes to say. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it, and I'd be happy to hear any comments, feedback, criticism, anything. It's really a conversation opener rather than a final word. So thank you.
Yes to inviting feedback. Thank you so much, Sarah and Mark, for your generous and brilliant offerings to part one of this book. Thank you. I will speak now to some of the chapters in part two that we named Expanding the Frame and Shifting Oppression Dynamics. I was the principal author on the first three chapters in that section, although what's there represents a lot of my collaboration with other people. So chapter 7, Seeing Oppression, Seeing and Addressing, chapter 6, sorry. Expanding the frames, freeing ourselves from systems of oppression. And that chapter, you'll see a lot of content that I worked, it represents the learning of a long line of people. To use Sarah Bertle's phrase, and the one that you lifted up, Mark, the people within Anti-Oppression Resource Group and elsewhere, to start with some common understandings for navigating systems of oppression. And I worked with Kara Bender for, I think, over a year, and to some extent with Mutima Amani on developing an anti-oppression foundations curriculum for Work That Reconnects facilitators. And so a lot of the content that we developed, you'll see in that chapter. Kara and I especially worked on a tool that we call the Social Location Mapping Wheel. And a simplified version of that tool appears in the book. And if you're interested in checking out the full tool, I put a link to it in the chat. It's just a visual tool for helping us to explore some of the social identities and the social location of those identities that each of us hold, meaning the proximity to systemic power that an identity affords to us. So that's chapter 6, laying some common foundations and offering some tools. Then in chapters 7 and 8, these chapters really grew out of the document I mentioned earlier, the De-Escalating Patterns of Harm in White Dominant Spaces document that I spent a lot of time with Carmen Rumbaut on developing that original document. Thank you so much, Carmen. And then we did that, I think, in 2018, 2019, and then we put it out to the community for feedback and input, and we incorporated some of that. And then there's a group of us that looked at, how can we expand this document? And so, Amy Lister, you're on the call. Hi, thank you for your efforts to that. Ellen Surfity and Tamir Natabni said, hey, we'd really like to dig into this more. And so I ended up working for, I think, the better part of a year with Tamir Natabni to develop a document that we never ended up publishing, From Harm to Care, De-Escalating Patterns of Harm in Group Facilitation. And I took a lot of content from that book and distilled it and condensed it, but also expanded on it in chapters 7 and 8. And so the intention with these chapters is to help make more visible some dynamics of oppression that often show up in group spaces, and then offer some tools and approaches for shifting those dynamics. So Tamir and I think maybe looked at 7 different dynamics, but the ones that made it into these 2 chapters are centering, not noticing, ignoring, or reinforcing oppressive harm, avoiding accountability, and extraction. And some of those may seem opaque to you all. I hope you'll check out the chapters on them to learn more about it. But I'm not going to take any more time on it at this moment, because it's my great pleasure to introduce Ian Doe, who wrote the last chapter in part 2 on queering the work that reconnects, embracing the wild fluidity of life. Ian, are you here with us now?
I don't think he's here.
Don't see
He
them.
was on
Oh,
briefly and then wasn't, so he may have lost
okay.
internet. So just tell us about it.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great chapter title, and it's a great chapter. And so it's going to be a teaser. I'm actually going to invite you all to just read the chapter in the book. Although, Molly, you work most closely with Ian. Do you want to say a few things about it?
Yeah, I'll say just a few things because Ian actually wrote this. I had known him because he was part of the facilitator development program that I work with, Spiral Journeys. He had been a participant in that program, and he sent me this essay he'd written. Uh, he didn't, I don't think he even knew that we were writing this book. And he sent me this essay on querying the work, and it was like, oh, this has got to go into the book. So we worked with him, and he obviously expanded it and etc. But it is just, I learned so much about uh, moving beyond the binaries. That's basically what it's about, moving beyond the binaries of gender binaries or any other kind of binaries, white, versus not white or whatever. Um, it's just a very, very inclusive and loving chapter. So recommend it very highly.
Mm. Molly, I don't know if you already mentioned that Ian's in Malaysia. It's very late
Oh, I'm
in the middle
sorry.
of the
Yeah,
night
he's
then.
from
So,
Malaysia.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing those little teasers about Ian's chapter. It's truly wonderful, and I'm excited for you all to check it out. I'm going to share a little bit about part 3, which I think will appear in the chat. Yes, thank you, Gemma. So this section of the book is where we really dig into looking at some things relating specifically to group facilitation. And some of it is particular to the work that reconnects, but most of it isn't. And some of it is particular to group facilitation, but a lot of it also isn't. So with this book, there are some pieces that are really directed at work that reconnects, and also a lot of it is relevant to a lot of life. And so if you're not actively facilitating the work that reconnects or involved in it at all, there's still some great things to check out in this section of the book. In chapter 10, I offer some suggestions for steps facilitators can take before a workshop begins, because there's a lot of work we can do before people even get into the room. And then early on in the workshop, there's important steps to take. And then as the workshop proceeds, there are other steps to take. So there's a lot of pointers in that on group facilitation with the anti-oppression approach. And like Sarah and Mark so generously said, I welcome your feedback. A lot of the things that I recommend there have worked well in a lot of contexts, but they may not work in all contexts. I live and work in the United States, and so I operate from that lens. And the Work That Reconnects is a global community. So the invitation with those suggestions is to look at them, see if they'll work in your context or not, and you may need to adapt them some to your local conditions and context. Also, at the end of that chapter, there's some suggestions for how to address some particular isms, including ableism, the federal patriarchy, and settler colonialism. And in that last section on settler colonialism, Kurt Kuhwald offers a land and labor acknowledgement. So that's chapter 10. And in chapter 11, it explores trauma awareness and approaches for group facilitation. Feel deeply grateful that Margaret Babbitt and Jana Diamond offered some sections to this chapter. They are dear friends and colleagues of mine, and yeah, greater tending to understanding about how trauma manifests with us individually and in group settings, and better tending to it feels like such an essential growing edge for many of us who facilitate group work. So wonderful things to check out in chapter 11. Chapter 12, I co-wrote with Molly, and it's called Inner Work for Collective Liberation. And this goes into some work with unlearning internalized superiority and unlearning internalized inferiority, and also just some tips about some common blockages people may encounter when leaning into this work for collective liberation, and some tips for how you may work with that. So yeah, chapter 12 especially is not really focused specifically on facilitation. It's inner work that can support any number of us. And Molly, you also have a section in that book, and it's useful to facilitators, but everyone. And so I'd love to pass it over to you to share anything that you want to share about chapter 12 inner work, and then our work on chapter 13.
Okay, yeah. Well, we realized as we were working is that all this work on how we are together when we're working together, there's a big part that has to do with our inner work, how we come to realize our own biases, our own hang-ups, our own what we call in psychosynthesis subpersonalities that come about through life conditioning. And if we can't be aware of them, it's going to be really hard to change our outward behavior if we can't if we're not aware enough of what's going on inside. Our assumptions, our beliefs, our ways of reacting. So I brought in psychosynthesis, which is a big background of mine, and I realized how much that has informed and supported my work in liberation. So I share that too in that chapter. I think that's enough. Oh,
Sounds
but
good.
it
Part
goes
four?
to me next because we go into cultural context, which is part 4. And this is really an attempt to bring in the fact that the work is primarily written by European Americans and has been mostly practiced in the past in the United States and in Europe, and wanting to expand it to other parts of the world, other cultures, and which it already is happening on a big scale. So we the first part Aravinda and I worked on together, and it addresses things like, well, there's a lot of Buddhism in the Work That Reconnects, and how to bring that in a way that isn't culturally appropriative. And we talk about that issue of cultural appropriation in some depth. And and some of the challenges that come up when we're bringing It's like we don't want the work that reconnects to be a white European thing that's being imposed in other cultures. We want it to be something of use, but being informed and changed by the culture it's working in. So, one of the sections in that chapter is written by Rukmini and Mayuri from India, and Rukmini will talk about her section, their section.
Thank you, Molly. Namaste, everyone. I'm joining in from Mumbai in India. This is the ancestral lands of the Agri and the Koli people. And in recent history, this was a land that used to be a Portuguese colony, offered as dowry to the British before it was absorbed in independent India in 1947. So when Mayuri and I were invited to contribute to this book, we knew we wanted to write it from the soil that we live on. India, the country and the state that it is right now, with all its beauty, all its contradictions and complexities of everyday living. And for both of us, both for Mayuri and for me, as practitioners of this work, it's always been far more than a facilitation framework. It's always been a living practice. It's a way of perceiving and recalling and remembering ourselves back to the web of life. And bringing this work into the Indian context has meant uh, meeting something not as something to be applied, not as a framework that is to be imported and applied, but as something that is ancient, that exists in our bones. And we thought of our task as that of listening to the land, listening to caste and class realities on this land, to the silenced wisdom of our indigenous and rural communities, and also to the ruptures that have been left by colonization, and they still live in our bodies and in our institutions and our systems and structures. So writing this chapter was in a way an act of translation, but not translation between languages, but really translation between worlds. And of course, we wanted to honor Joanna Macy's lineage while also widening the framework so that the work could breathe through diverse cosmologies. And in India, I think that the challenges of facilitation are layered, like I imagine it is in very many lands. There's religious polarization, there's caste hierarchies, there's gendered power, and of course, linguistic multiplicity. And yet, within this diversity, there's also the potential for very deep reconnection. We've seen in the work that Mayuri and I do together, we've seen, Kashmiri participants offering isband, wild rue seeds, as a ritual of purification as we adapted the work to local contexts. We've seen and heard a Tamil woman from south of India telling her story in her mother tongue as a way of reclaiming power and reconnection with her land. We've also noticed what the power of silence is when a circle sits together under a neem tree. And it's these moments which remind us that reconnection is not a technique, it is really relationship that is restored. And having had these experiences in facilitating this work, our writing was really a mirror of our practice. And it was a mirror on how to hold space where no single tradition dominates, where rituals emerge organically from what the land remembers and from what its people remember. And this process of writing has also taught us that decolonizing the work that reconnects is not about rejection, it is about reclamation, reclaiming our right to interpret, reclaiming our right to root, to belong where we are. And this chapter, therefore, is our offering towards a a plural and perhaps a more grounded work that reconnects, where we acknowledge pain, we acknowledge possibility, and the structure and the spirit of this work, of course. And we invite facilitators everywhere to draw from your own cultural walls, your own cultural wells, and of course, walk with it gently, uh, and also to acknowledge what is not yours as you're walking along, and to keep asking, what does reconnection look like on your soil among the people that you are in this time and space that we share? So that's the spirit with which we offer this chapter and our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Rukmini. And Rukmini is also part of the Spiral Journey Facilitator Development Program teams, and I've so enjoyed working with you. And now we have Helena is going to introduce a video from Hector and also talk about the amazing work that they're doing in Colombia. Carry on, Helena.
Hello, all of you. Yeah, my name is Helena, and talking to you from the Netherlands. But I have been nourishing a deep friendship with Colombia for 25 years. I worked a lot over there and as a peace activist, and I started offering deep ecology and peace construction workshops from 2014. And when the peace process was starting, there was this Truth Commission being installed in Colombia. And we had this great opportunity to become an official ally of the Truth Commission, which was quite incredible because it was really bringing the work that reconnects on a state level. It was financed on state level with donors, international donors. And we felt there was such an opportunity with the work that reconnects in a country where there's such an amazing biodiversity, amazing nature, being victim of the conflict also itself, but having this profound wisdom, nature as the ancestral mother that can hold us all in her embrace without judgment. We felt there was this opportunity to bring together in the womb of Mother Nature ex-combatants from all sides, victims, indigenous leaders, Afro-Colombian leaders, artists, journalists. So we started accompanying the Truth Commission in all of the territories of Colombia, finding nature reserves that could give us this safe space. And Hector Aristizabal, my Colombian colleague, all of the members of the team were Colombians. I was the only white woman from outside. He was the co-founder of Reconectando, Laboratories of Truth and Reconciliation in the Womb of Mother Nature. And he will speak some words from Australia, where he's talking about Reconectando right now. So Molly, could you please show us this little video, and I'll connect after.
So in writing this chapter, we became aware of many, many things. I would like to share that I feel that the Work That Reconnects became like a bridge between Colombia's long-standing war and the often invisible architecture of healing that exists already in most of the communities that we were able to accompany. So the spiral of the Work That Reconnects, our theater games, and all the techniques that we brought, it's not that we brought them into the community, but they became like doorways that made visible some of the internal resources that already existed there, resources of care, of relationality, of working together, of honoring the earth. So somehow the Work That Reconnects reopened those channels. like when a forest burns, underneath the network of the mycelium is already working to bring life back into the world. We are working more in the field of the soul's mycelium, in which we use the collective trauma, we use the storytelling, we open the wound to find the medicine in it, to find the wisdom in it. And we also hope that with this work, what we're doing with the peace process is how to root it back into belonging to ourselves, to each other, and to the mother. So thank you for the opportunity to write this chapter.
I've had it.
So yeah, so it's so interesting. We use a lot this metaphor of the mycelium because it's really this network underground that is preparing the new and that is composting death into new life. And God knows how much death there was around and is around in Colombia. But also we felt that proposing this care for Mother Nature as a living, sentient, intelligent body was an immense source of inspiration for the peace process. Bringing ex-paramilitary, ex-guerrilla, ex-army officials with victims, with leaders around this care and the risk for Mother Nature being harmed in Colombia was something they could all relate to, and it's really one of the first times that a Truth Commission is taking very serious the pain of Mother Earth and nature seen as a victim of the conflict in its final report. So it really mentions this with several chapters, and they're connecting with the ethnic people of Colombia. So Reconectando really could help raise this awareness that nature is really as much part of this conflict and victim. And at the same time, an immense source of healing for all of us. When I listened to Rukmini about India and how we could root the work that reconnects into the territorial soils, we could also feel how we could honor the local medicines. We would always have indigenous people, Afro-Colombians, and honor their own traditions and give them the word and the platform and the space to tell in their own ways how they thank Mother Earth, how they ask permission. And people would feel so safe to know that there were still peoples in their country that have this deep connection with nature. Although a lot of people in Colombia are Catholic and evangelicals, but they still have these deep sources of wisdom. And maybe the last point I wanted to make is about truth telling. The truth mandala, which is one of these famous, beautiful rituals. It took up a whole new dimension in our workshops where officials of the Truth Commission would assist. They would participate in the same manner as all the other participants and show their own vulnerability, making the trust between all the people so much deeper. And the truth that would well up of these wounded souls of ex-combatants, of victims, was so much more lively, so much more connected, that reconciliation processes would emerge naturally. We would never incite to ask forgiveness or work for reconciliation. It was happening because people were connecting to their trauma, to their soul, to their vulnerability. And it was just empathy being created all over the sectors of society. And it was not anymore we were all wounded people in construction. The role of Mother Nature in our work is just so powerful, and now it's going on. Our work is going on with the Peace Tribunal and other communities being invited from outside. So yeah, we really hope that many people can connect to this process.
So, thank you so much. So, we would move into part 5, and I think we do not have speakers, uh, two speakers that we thought we would have. Uh, per-
Yeah,
uh,
Molly.
do you feel up to talking about Gopal's, the
Um,
movement generation
well,
chapter?
I could just do kind of a brief overview just so folks had a sense of it. I think that I was confused when Gopal told me in the midst of everything that was going on with me. That he was really saying he was coming to the Saturday. I mean to the what was he coming to? I don't know. Oh, this is the book launch though. No, I thought he was going to be here. That's right. Oh, I'm so sad. Okay. Well, let me say, just for folks, just in general, that this chapter represents one of the dynamics within this book that I think emerged as we were writing, that brought into our understanding that what we were about was actually entering into a massive river across the planet that had to do with work that was like the work that reconnects, that could be named the work that reconnects if you wanted to, but it wasn't the specific work that reconnects that came out of Joanna and all of your work, but it was work, and it was reconnecting. And so there was a way in which we really wanted to include other people who were doing things in the world who weren't specifically leading Work That Reconnects workshops. And so the work that the Movement Generation is a frontline organization in the United States that has been for decades been bringing frontline communities together and supporting them in various ways so that they can expand their power and their influence and their participation in the process of transformation and change. And uh, they um, um, yeah, I'm in the hospital and people keep coming in. Um, uh, so that's what they did. They selected a number of issues that had happened, specific issues, and then they focused on a couple of dynamics. One was slides, and one was no, what was the other? Anyway, there were a couple of specific political kind of
Slides, slides
slides.
in, what's the other one? Do you remember,
Shock,
Aravind?
shocks and slides.
Yes,
Yeah.
shocks. That's it. Yes. So yeah, so they recognized that there were things that happened within cultural, social, political movements where there were shocks to the system, and that created a certain kind of cascade of change. They also saw that there were slides. There were things that gradually happened over time, and so that's what this article in many respects is a focus on that. And it's great stuff. And the thing that leads the chapter is this magnificent diagram of their vision of the transformation of the economy and the social system. It's really marvelous. We had to convince the artist who did that drawing to put his name on it because they are so committed to their collectivity that he felt a little like he was sticking himself up, above everybody else. And we said, no, 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 you need your name in there. So, so he did. And then, yeah, gosh, AJ, boy, couldn't we? Who would like to speak for AJ? My gosh,
I'll speak about AJ.
good.
Uh, AJ had written an article for Deep Times Journal, which I edit, and it was called uh, The End of the World for Whom? And his challenge is saying, we're talking about, climate crisis and other kinds of things about the end of the world, but indigenous people and people of the global majority of Black people, brown people have been facing the end of their worlds over the last thousands of years. And uh, so that's what his chapter, anyway, I wanted to include his article that had been published in Deep Time Journal because it felt so relevant that when we talk about going forth, which is what this last section is about, we need to talk about how that's different for different people in different situations. I'm seeing somebody sending up flyers and flames. Yeah. So I really recommend his chapter. It's very, very it's wonderful. And then we can hear a little bit about the the last part of the book, which is the afterword and then the appendices. So Kurt's going to talk about the afterword, or do you want to just
Yeah.
run your video? You want to talk
Oh
about it?
no, let me talk about it
Great.
because the problem is that I'm also the doctor is coming. I'm trying to get out of this hospital, and the doctor is coming. So I'm hoping she'll come in and sit with me. Wonderful women. I have to tell you, I did want to say something about being in the hospital under these circumstances. This has been one of the most profound experiences of relationship that I've ever had. I mean that what the healing is. I mean the healing comes from the relationship, and in this hospital is an international hospital, and so they're just people from all over the world. It's just incredible, such an amazing experience. So the afterword, I had a poem that what I wanted. So what I wanted in this chapter was what I wanted was somewhere in the book, and it ended up being in this chapter, was that something about the elder experience and the issue of elder oppression needed to be brought in as well. And because this is something we don't typically talk about, and because I'm 82, I was the right person to do it. But so that was what my intention was. And let's see who this is. And hi, I'm on a call. Thank you. And but I'm also a poet, and so I felt like I wanted to bring it in a poem. And I also felt pretty strongly about the power of this book. There's so much power in this book. There's so much intellectual, deep understanding and analysis in this book. And I really wanted to bring poetry into the book. And of course, we all know that that was one of the great gifts that Joanna and Molly brought, was this, I mean, albeit it was always white people, but still, it was wonderful poetry. And so I felt like, yes, we indeed needed to end in a poem. And so, but I also didn't want just my voice. So the way that I managed that was that I brought together, now I always blank on what these things are called. Let's just second here. Epigraphs. Yeah. So I brought 13 epigraphs together from all over the world, from different voices, from different communities. And I had those preface the poem. And do I have enough time to read the poem?
Don't know. Maybe leave it for people to have that experience when they
Okay, good.
go to the
That's good.
book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Molly. Okay, well, so I did. I wrote the poem and I ended with that, and then we went on into the thicket, the wonderful thicket of all of the appendices that mostly Aravinda and Molly put together. Molly, so yeah. Um,
Thank you, Kurt. I
yeah.
think that's real. I mean, I'll talk about the appendices, but
Yeah, well,
also just, yeah.
let me just say that the last lines of the poem, so the last lines of this chapter are, love has never, will never abandon us. And that ground and that root is what I feel is part of the structure of this.
And you're
Thank you.
getting a lot of hearts in response to that.
Thank you. Okay.
Love will never abandon us.
I may need to jump out. I may need to jump out now,
Sure,
especially
sure.
if the doctor comes, but I need to check with the nurse here. Okay.
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 Mute yourself, please. There you go. All right. So then we ended up with 4 appendices. And I'm going to even have to look and see what they are because I can't even remember. Giving and receiving feedback about harm. It's kind of like that's a particularly difficult situation when somebody tells you or you need to tell someone that they've caused some harm. So we have a section on giving advice about that. We have a section on community agreements, which we've used various parts of what we've used in various workshops. It's always a good thing to do at the beginning of a workshop is to have some community agreements about how you're going to be there. A section on one on why share gender pronouns and the need that we have to begin sharing gender pronouns, even if we are identified with our, our how we were, what we were assigned at birth. So I always put my name, she, after my name, because I realize if the only people sharing gender pronouns are people who use they kind of stick out. So as an act of solidarity, we can use our gender pronouns if we're traditional pronouns. Re Considering the practice called reporting to Chief Seattle. Some of you may know that and some of the difficulties with that. The Facilitator Assessment Guide, which is a really useful tool if you're a facilitator, to just sort of see where do I need to grow and where do I need to put my energies. And some recommended resources in addition to what we already include in the bibliography. And well, actually, it's not the bibliography, the notes. Uh, this is extensively referenced, and there's extensive notes. So those are our appendices.
I would just add, last but not least, is acknowledgments. There are so many people who made it possible for this book to be in the world, and you can hear more about them in our acknowledgments. Just deep gratitude to each person who contributed to, as has been acknowledged in the chat, this massive labor of love. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So we have some time for questions, and we're hoping that people have put some in chat. And if they're addressed to a particular person besides Aravinda and me, you're welcome. We'll put that person on to answer the questions. And so
I think Jen
we've
might
got,
had something she wanted to say to start us out.
I know that Jen Mizell had a comment, and maybe this would be the place to start with
Hi.
her comment.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Well, I just was feeling the presence of our beloved Joanna Macy during all of this, and just wanted to say how I can just picture her having the biggest grin on her face in hearing everybody speak today and knowing that this project is moving out into the world. And she was a radical thinker and a radical woman who wanted to leave this open source so that it could evolve. So I'm feeling touched by this evolution of the work coming out at this time in this book. And I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, Joanna left this earthly plane this past July. And so that was what I wanted to say. I just wanted to presence her smile, her smiling upon all of you right now and the work that you've all done.
Thank you so much. I was thinking that myself, that we haven't acknowledged Joanna. And so thank you so much for doing that. We have one question. Does the book use the expanded spiral Mutima presents in Mindful Earth Liberation? Do you want to answer that one, Aravinda?
Sure, I can. It doesn't describe it in full depth, so please check out Mutima's Mindful Earth Liberation book for more about Mutima's expanded spiral. It has so much genius in it and medicine for anyone who's called to the spiral to work that reconnect. Yeah.
So I'm not seeing any questions in chat. Are there any questions? Did anybody want to either raise your hand or put it in chat for any of our presenters that presented today, not just for us? I have to say I was really glad that Kurt could be with us because, as you see, he was in the hospital recovering from heart surgery and sent a video, but then was able to speak in person. So that was really great. So we maybe don't have any questions. A lot of people have had to leave because it's a long 2 hours. Oh, here's Amy. Do you have a question, Amy?
Yeah, I'm getting over a seasonal cold. So I may cough. But I just really, really, from my heart to all of yours, want to thank your generosity and your graciousness over all of the many years that you have woven this together amidst all the other amazing work that you do personally and professionally. I'm feeling really held and resourced over in my corner here, and just want to say that we have a local community of Work That Reconnects enthusiasts who are co-creating a way of being together. And I feel like all the chapters of your book are anecdotes or balm that have come to soothe all the really the questions alive in me and in us in this group. And so I know we're representing only one gathering of folks, but it feels really pertinent at this time in history. And I just want a deep bow of gratitude to all of you for moving your vision into action. And I'm excited to see how it'll ripple out and connect us all with our gifts. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. It's really good to hear that this book could be of real use and helpful for a lot of different people. And there's more to go. We might have to write a additional book sometime in the future when other people can contribute from the work that they've done. So I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up. Aravinda, do you think so? Do you have anything final to say?
Sure. Yeah, there's a couple of options for continued learning that I wanted to present in the group today. And so do you want to speak first about upcoming network webinars?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the Work That Reconnects Network webinar program has always ongoing learning opportunities, and we've got a lot coming up in the next year. But as this book comes out and launches, we are starting to explore possible follow-up webinars from the various different contributors. So we don't have anything on the books yet. We don't have anything in the calendar quite yet, but stay tuned, pay attention, because some of these contributors may develop a webinar that is based off of, what they shared in the book, and we can go a little deeper with them. We can learn directly from them and work with them in one of these events. So, like I said, nothing solid yet. We don't have any links, but just pay attention and remember that there will be follow-up and connection through the network connected to this book. And then you've got some other things lined up too, Ananda, right? Aravinda.
Yeah, sure. So, and Louise, I see your hand. Thank you for being here. And I'm just going to make this announcement, and then maybe we'll turn it back to you for another question or comment. So, I had an email in my inbox shortly before getting on here that Ian Go is interested in potentially offering a Work That Reconnects follow-up webinar So you didn't get to hear from Ian today, but there may be a webinar with him in the near future. So check out future offerings from the Work That Reconnects Network. You may have an opportunity to learn more deeply with contributors to this book through Work That Reconnects Network. I wanted to share an opportunity for deeper learning available through Interhelp Network. I'm going to offer a book study action integration application group that's focusing on the content of the chapters that I mainly worked on. And so it's geared especially towards Work That Reconnects facilitators. There'll be 6 sessions. It's launching in January of this coming year. So check that out if you'd be interested in learning with other Work That Reconnects facilitators about applying some of the content in the book to that. And yeah, may this book be of service to learning, healing, and growing. There's lots of wonderful people doing this work. Just another huge shout out to Mutima Amani and Mindful Earth Liberation and her work with the Expanded Spiral. So thank you very much for being here and for hearing about the book. I hope a lot of you get a chance to read it. And I believe that's what I had to share. But Louise, you have your hand up. Did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, I did. Let's see, I have to lower my hand now. I really just want to thank you for this webinar today. This has been remarkable. As an advanced reader of the book, I know it's a huge amount to digest as a reader. There's so much, as you can tell from this, the diversity and the depth and the many voices in this program today. And I think it's a beginning. It's only a beginning. It's only a beginning, or maybe a continuation of the work that we need to be doing. So I was trying to formulate something, and then I think you have exactly the idea I had about the conversations. We need to have more conversations with all of these voices that have been speaking today. I want to hear more from Hector. I want to hear more from the women in India who are working on this. I think it's important to hear from the white-bodied practitioners in the United States, but I also really want to hear from the world majority on this issue. So I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping there can maybe even be a follow-up to this webinar that focuses on that diversity, on that beautiful weaving of voices that came together in the book. And I am very eager to hear about and read Mutima's book coming up soon. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We do have a question for Helena. I think we have time for it? I tell you what we'll do. We'll ask the question, but those of you that need to leave, please, thank you for coming. And we won't be going overtime. I'm sure we'll end by 12 by the half hour. But just in case, thank you all for coming. And oh, thank you for the contributors. The book would not have been made without all these contributors. So let's hear about, the question is about, for Helena, how was the Colombian peace agreement made room for the Truth Commission? Its apparent success seems like a powerful model. Could it be used elsewhere where conflicts have done so much damage?
Yeah, just a small question at the end of this webinar. It's a very complicated process that took 6 years in Cuba, where they negotiated with the FARC, the guerrilla of the FARC, and many years before with the paramilitary. And there was a peace agreement in 2016 that was then voted upon by the Colombian people. And the surprise of all of my friends, the Colombian people rejected the peace process. It was really a traumatic event. It was like, what do the Colombians do not want peace in their own time? And then there was a whole process of new adaptations. Finally, it got through. And part of this peace process was the instauration of three institutions, which was the Truth Commission, the Tribunal for Restorative Justice, with whom we're working right now is Reconectando, and there was the institution of disappeared people. And so it was an amazing peace agreement. It was really supported and applauded by all of the international community and accompanied. But I really feel pain inside when I see what's happening in Colombia today. Violence is not at all over. There's a lot of drugs-related violence, ancient factions recruiting child soldiers again. We will be unable to work in many of the regions because of new armed conflicts. So, there's not a magical solution for 60 years of conflict, but we still remain convinced that, working in the soil, working underground in the mycelium and reconnecting people to their own wisdom, their own traditions, getting them back rooted in their belonging, it will, in time, deep time, it will bring back beauty and peace in Colombia. So we keep on weaving the soul's mycelium in Colombia.
And there's a post in chat about a video that you could watch to learn more about past webinars that Hector and Helena have done. And it's put in chat there. So, well, thank you so much. And so thank you for being part of this group, Helena. And I see a baby in the background there. Yeah, I believe that is probably Aravinda's sister. Am I right? Holding the baby there? So always good to I should have said welcome babies at the beginning. Babies are going to be able to read the book, but they're always welcome online. So thank you so much. Do we have any ending music, Joe?
We have some announcements. Yeah, we have some things that we need to say to close up. Of course, to thank the two of you and Kurt and all of the contributors. And to bring our attention also again to what I put in the chat there. I know that there's a lot of interest in continued learning. And so I'm going to remind us to follow the link, and maybe Jeremy, you can put it back to Aravinda's study group that's directly connected to this book. But then also to look back at those past recordings, because many of the contributors in the book have done webinars with us in the past, and we're going to hopefully be doing some with them in the future. And then I want to bring your attention to our next upcoming webinar, which is a panel that has been put together from our Social Justice Committee. And it's going to be a panel of Work That Reconnects facilitators from South Africa and Asia, discussing oh gosh, I don't have my notes in front of me. It's global. Gemma, can you help me? Is it right there? Threads of connection. Threads of Connection, that's what we're calling it, the global fabric of the work that reconnects. And this is a series we did one a couple of months ago, and the recording is there on our recordings list. It was so good. And it will be a couple times a year where we're bringing voices in from where the work is emerging in new communities around the world. So it's deeply connected to this work. And I have to get back to my notes. I just got so turned around answering questions here. We do want you to fill out a survey for today's event, and I think, yeah, Gemma just popped it in there. This is an anonymous form, so you can just share with us how this was for you, how we could improve our offerings, and anything that you want to share with the facilitators. And if you would like to learn more about the Work That Reconnects Network or stay more connected, please visit our website, become a member, and be part of the conversation, be part of this ongoing, evolving, emerging work with us. All right. Any last thank you words from Aravinda and Molly?
Thank you to everyone who made this book possible. Yeah, made us be of service.
There it is.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Here.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Everybody
Thank you.
if we want to hear the voice of the group.
Thank you. Blessings.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank
you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. To learn more about the Work That Reconnects Network's webinar and Conversation Cafe program, please visit our website. We welcome you to become a community member of the Work That Reconnects Network. You can visit our website to learn more about that as well.